So last month, we have emails from David Weiss, who is now the special counsel, who was the U.S. attorney investigating Hunter Biden, to the Department of Justice, trading emails with DOJ's Legislative Affairs and Legal Counsel's Office about how to respond to questions posed by House Republicans about the Hunter Biden investigation. So he sought the advice of the DOJ, not his team, but the DOJ. How do you want us to respond to these political questions we may be receiving from House Republicans? Congressman Jim Jordan is going to be joining us live on the broadcast today to talk about this. But, Dad, that alone shows you why in these bizarre special counsel setups where they are really not truly independent of the Department of Justice. In fact, Merrick Garland is still David Weiss's boss, and Merrick Garland's boss is Joe Biden. Then it gets into this, I'd say, gray area at best, and it looks horrible on paper.
Well, I mean, the special counsel, as you said, it's not an independent counsel, so that's number one on this list. Number two, as this email shows, let's put it up on the screen if we can. The email, we're going to put it, there it is. I mean, it says it. Hi, Shannon. This is from Shannon Hansen, U.S. AD, United States Attorney in Delaware, to David Weiss, who's the now special counsel. He was not at the time that this email was drafted. And it says, we received a letter attached addressed to several department officials, including U.S. Attorney Weiss. Office of Legislative Affairs will take the lead on drafting responses for the department. When I see a draft, I will share it to you. Notice the if I see a draft. If you have any questions, please let me know. So you had this coordination of efforts going on here, and then it was reported over the weekend that a staff from Jack Smith's office, that's the D.C. special counsel dealing with the January 6th matter, had lawyers going over to the White House counsel's office to discuss issues with them. And the unusual nature of that was that normally that would have gone through the Deputy Attorney General. It's called the DAG. You wouldn't have direct communication. I mean, can you imagine if Trump's office did that? They'd have a fit. But that's what was going on there. And you had the unique situation in these particular cases where they're going after a former president who is the leading Republican candidate for president. Then you have on top of all of this now trial dates that are set on a calendar that's going to have the former president of the United States in trial basically from March 4th forward. Yeah, I mean, we look at this right now. I did an interview on Newsmax this morning just to walk people through because this is a very aggressive setup and it's so politically charged. It's so obvious. You don't have to even read between the lines. You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist. A D.C. judge sets the first trial date the day before Super Tuesday for someone who is the leading candidate of the major political party in the United States. All right, welcome back to Sekio. Just to kind of put this into perspective for you, this is how the DAs wanted to set this up, and it's coming to light now. And this is even from the New York Times. So a federal judge yesterday, Judge Chutkan out of D.C., set a trial date on March 4th, that's the day before Super Tuesday, in the prosecution of former President Trump. The decision by Judge Chutkan already is kind of getting in the way potentially of another DA because though it hadn't been approved yet by a judge, that is when Georgia's district attorney, Fannie Willis also had March 4th. So it's like they circled the day before Super Tuesday and said, let's start the trials then. So that, again, in Georgia, that hasn't gotten the okay yet. But then you go just a bit further into March 25th. So you go from definitely D.C. and then potentially to back to the New York district attorney. They want to start that case over the financial crimes. That's Alvin Bragg. They want to do that March 25th. Why do I bring up March so importantly? Because the classified one, that one is going to take a much longer because there's a Classified Documents Act. You have to go through every piece of evidence. It's going to be a long time before that has any trial date. So kind of push that one to the side. They all want to bring their cases in March, Dad. Everybody
and
does.
There's only one reason to do that. March is the most important time politically in the primary season for each major party. It is when usually the next candidate is chosen, or at least the field is whittled down to two candidates. It is that critical of a time, and they are trying to get by scheduling these trials, and I have no doubt this is their intent, they are trying to get Donald Trump off the campaign trail, forcing him to sit in courtrooms.
Because what has happened here, if you look at the way that these trials are coming together, and I think this is the thing you have to focus on here, it is March-centric. That's what all the DAs are asking for, March-centric. The judge wants that also. That effectively, as you said, takes the leading Republican candidate out of the election process. Because remember, it's not just showing up to trial. You have to be prepared for trial. Now, I wouldn't put Donald Trump on the stand. That would not be the way I try the case. But these lawyers are in a very, I know these lawyers, and they're very good lawyers. John Lauro is an excellent lawyer. John Sauer, these are good lawyers. Of course, Steve Sadow in Atlanta, great lawyer. And these are all great lawyers. But they've got a very difficult challenge coming on, and it's so obviously political that you could see through it. Even some of the left-wing media was saying that.
When you talk about witch hunt, this is the ultimate of witch hunts, a coordinated effort by judges both in the federal and state system to bring a former president and leading nominee into court the most important month of the primary season. Let
me say something else on this, then we will get to our phone calls. Also understand this. If they go to trial in March, let's say the trial takes 6 weeks, so you're through you're in May. Sentencing will be May.
Yep.
I mean, if there's a guilty verdict, which in D.C. is likely because it's a D.C. jury, you're going to have a sentencing of the leading Republican candidate in May or June. I mean, how that plays politically, I'm not sure. Does it galvanize the base, or do you know? There's no historic precedent for this.
So far the indictments have galvanized the base. With a guilty verdict and a president potentially being behind bars or under house arrest or something like that, would that galvanize the base still? That is a question that remains to be seen.
Well, they could also take him. You realize they could take him off the battlefield, so to speak.
Yes.
Because they could say we're going to, pending sentencing or reporting. Let's say they don't do jail, they do house arrest. You can't leave. So if you don't think this is political,
you have to run your campaign like Joe Biden did the first time.
Yeah, and probably could still win. But I mean, it's very, very difficult situation. Let's go right to the phones.
Even when you take out when you take out the legal issues, just the timing alone here is so important.
I know.
Becky in Tennessee on line 1. Hey, Becky.
My question is, after taking paralegal classes for some time back, I learned the responsibilities of the courts.
Yep.
And just wonder why the U.S. Supreme Court does not have a letter sent out to all the judges and all the attorneys regarding their conduct responsibilities.
It's a good question, but here's the reason why. The Supreme Court can only act upon specific grants of jurisdiction. That's what the Constitution says. And also what the statutes, the Judiciary Act say. So the Supreme Court cannot sui sponte, in other words, on its own motion, Becky, say, hey, judges, you can't put all these cases together. Now, lawyers could make motions that could go from the district court or the state court to the Court of Appeals in the state or the Court of Appeals in the federal system, and then ultimately to the Supreme Court and weigh in on it. But I got to tell you something, not likely to move a trial date. I mean, it's not unconstitutional. I would argue it is unconstitutional because you're denied effective assistance of counsel if you're putting this kind of pressure on the lawyers to get this case ready. The government had 2 years to put it together. You have 6 months. I mean, that's absurd. But so those motions could be made, but the Supreme Court can only act when asked to act, and that's where the lawyers have to get in there. And at the ACLJ, as these constitutional issues mature, and if there are constitutional issues that are maturing, we're going to get engaged.
Everybody sees through. Listen, these district court judges, they're smart. They're very politically involved, even though they're supposed to keep politics out of it, Dad. They follow politics closely. They're appointed politically. So and especially ones based out of Washington, D.C. So to put the date at March 4th is a finger in the eye to Donald Trump. It's a statement move. And when you say that, you don't just randomly choose the day before Super Tuesday to start a trial that would then keep the leading candidate in your courtroom and with an inability to fully campaign. It just reeks of not even a two-tiered system of justice, but a system of justice that has turned on anyone who happens to be conservative.
Yeah, but what they've also done is by cramming these cases all in March. I mean, they have effectively taken it. Let's assume that Donald Trump's
before they won in March.
Yeah, but here's the thing: it effectively takes him off the field because
the important month of the primary season.
Well, and then past that.
Yeah.
So let's say he's the nominee, even with all this.
Survives
okay,
this.
But what if he has a jail sentence in Washington? Now maybe he could, pending appeal, they could not enforce it. That is home confinement or jail. Who knows what it would be in D.C.
We're now joined by Congressman Jim Jordan as well, who chairs the House Judiciary Committee. And Congressman Jordan, I want to go right to you because you are demanding an unredacted information on Hunter Biden's special counsel appointment. There's so many bizarre moves now from David Weiss and his team. It seems like, Congressman Jordan, this is the time for Congress to get some real answers on what is going on here.
Yeah, why do we need a special counsel when the investigation was already completed? And by definition, the investigation was completed because they'd entered a plea agreement. They went to the judge. Now, thank goodness the court and the judge said this plea agreement's bogus. But why do you need a special counsel now after 4 years when you'd already had a plea deal in front of the court? It makes the time for a special counsel, frankly, was probably January 20th, 2021 at about 12:02. When Joe Biden takes the oath of office and the Justice Department says, we've been investigating his son, his father is now president of the United States, maybe that's a situation that would warrant a special counsel. They should have named it then, not now, when we're figuring out just how bad this investigation has been run, thanks to those two brave whistleblowers who came forward a few months ago.
We're Jim, this is Jay, and we're representing some of those whistleblowers, and they've used the phrase crushed by the FBI because they're put in this unbelievable situation where their security clearances are basically suspended and they're not getting paid and they can't take outside work. You look at this and you say to yourself, between what's happening there and what you're dealing with this so-called special counsel, and my view on special counsel, I don't like them. I don't like the whole process. It always ends up messy. This is going to be no exception, as you're learning, as you know firsthand from your experience. But if you look at that, then I combine it with the judges that are all throwing the trials on Donald Trump in March, the day before Super Tuesday, where the country's looking like a laughingstock here.
Yeah, and then they do it because they can. I mean, that's the arrogance and the power that they use to for their political purposes is, as you say, just completely frightening. I'm frustrated by it all, and we've said this for a long time. You guys said it for a long time that there's a double standard. There's not equal application of the law, and the country sees that, and that's not supposed to be the way it works in America, the greatest nation ever. But it's exactly what's happening. We shouldn't be surprised, though, that they're retaliating against FBI agents. They are retaliating against these IRS agents who came forward because a Justice Department, a DOJ, and an FBI who will spy on a presidential campaign, who will say parents are terrorists who show up at school board meetings, who will say that pro-life Catholics are extremists, who will do the things they've done. We shouldn't be surprised that they retaliate against the very people who come forward and tell us about those issues and those things that were going on in the Justice Department. That's how bad it's gotten, and it's why it's so important that we win the White House in the next election, and I'm hoping that individual is going to be President Trump.
So, and they're hoping it's not. Let me tell you. I mean, as you know, I've represented this guy for a long time now, and they are hoping it's not. And they're hoping it's not by doing everything they can between these special counsels and the hearing dates. But I want to talk about what you're doing because a lot of the American people are really counting on you, Congressman Jordan, and your committees to get to the bottom of this. And how confident are you that we're going to get some real answers here?
Oh, I think we will. We've already got some changes made. I mean, the fact that the IRS announced 4 weeks ago that they will no longer send agents unannounced to Americans' homes, that's because we caught them doing that. When Matt Taibbi was testifying in front of our committee and the Democrats are asking him to divulge their sources, he's given them a lecture on the First Amendment. While all that's going on, the IRS was knocking on his door, for goodness sake. So because we brought that to light, I think that's the reason. Now, Danny Werfel, the commissioner, says, oh, no, it's because we're concerned about the safety of our agents. Baloney. You did it because we caught you doing things arrogantly, aggressively against the American people. So I'm confident we're going to get to the bottom of this. I also feel like, and the speaker has been clear about this, I do think it's likely we move to an impeachment inquiry. The facts keep building up here on this Biden business operation, the ties to Burisma, what we learned in the Devin Archer deposition. I do think that's looking more and more likely. And the speaker said if that's where our oversight takes us, we will go there. I do think that we have Merrick Garland coming in on September 20th. We're gonna get to the bottom of some of this stuff dealing with David Weiss. The Justice Department said David Weiss. They've committed to us that he will be in front of the Judiciary Committee late September, early October. We'll see if they honor that commitment now that they named him special counsel. But we're going to keep working to get the facts.
Congressman Jordan, we appreciate everything you're doing. We appreciate working with you and your team, and keep up the great work for the American people.
The same. You do the same. Thanks.
We've got 16 lawsuits against the Biden administration, folks. We're representing these whistleblowers. My colleagues are on the phone with the whistleblowers and their lawyer and other lawyers this afternoon. We're fighting for freedom.
Our senior analyst, Tulsi Gabbard, joining us now to discuss some issues, too. We'll take calls on politics as well throughout the show. We got a lot more coming up today on the broadcast. But with Tulsi, news out of Ukraine, because we now have that former prosecutor, Viktor Shokin, who was fired, famously by Joe Biden. He said, listen, you don't either fire him today or the $1 billion, you're not going to get $1 billion. Sounded like a quid pro quo, and he was ultimately fired. And there was this whole story that, his firing had nothing to do with Burisma. In fact, the problem was he wasn't going after the corruption in Burisma. Now he's done interviews where he directly says, Tulsi, he was fired because of his investigation into Burisma and what the Bidens were doing in Ukraine.
Jordan, it would be easy for some people, and I think some Democrats are using the line, Democrats in Washington, well, this is a matter of like he said, it's one word against the other. And of course, they're going to go with the word of the Biden family. But what's becoming very real is there are multiple pieces of evidence and documents that Congress was asking for months, if not longer, that actually point to a very specific timeline that proves what that prosecutor is saying to be true. He was actively investigating Burisma. You had Devin Archer working for Burisma, going and trying to get the Biden administration to act and shut this guy down. And what happened? It's not a coincidence. It cannot be a coincidence that President Biden went to Ukraine to fire this prosecutor who was going after the business that Hunter Biden was working for. This is such a clear point, Jordan, to the great threat, the imminent threat that we face in this country, which is political powers, the Democrat elite, are using and abusing their power by turning the Department of Justice against their political opponents, very specifically President Donald Trump, to try to make it so voters don't even have the option to choose him, and to protect their own, to protect Hunter Biden, to protect President Biden and their family, and frankly, protect voters from seeing how corrupt they actually are. This is what is the most dangerous thing, because they're turning the United States of America into a banana republic through their actions.
Tulsi, I said something very similar just a few minutes ago. If you look at the situation right now, you got the Ukraine situation and what was going on there, and the money going into Hunter Biden and all that. Okay, I mean, it reeks of corruption, no question. And I did the impeachment that was involving Ukraine. And I mean, everybody knows Ukraine has got corruption issues. This is not new. But if you were looking at the United States right now from another country and saying, okay, you got a former president of the United States who is the leading candidate right now for the Republican Party for president for 2024, and he has four criminal cases against him, and all four of them want to have the trial in March, the day before Super Tuesday. You ran for president, so you know how significant that date is. You think to yourself, geez, that's going to look pretty political. But the Justice Department, like you said, the judges are going along with this, like this is okay. And the problem is it's not okay. Fixing it is very difficult. But this is looking horrible for us on the global stage right now, in my view. What do you think?
Yeah, Jay, I couldn't agree more. When I saw the news come out, I think it was yesterday, that March 4th was the day that they chose. It is so transparent, regardless of political affiliation or political agreements or disagreements. Anyone who's looking at what's happening with clear eyes and an open mind can recognize how overtly they are trying to keep President Trump off of the campaign trail to keep him away from being able to make his case to voters in this country of why they should elect him as president and commander in chief once again. They're afraid that he actually could win, which is why they are committing this such egregious abuse of power that cuts so much deeper than just going after President Trump, because what they're really doing is setting this precedent that puts the United States of America not on a high platform of trying to be an example of democracy to the world, but of reducing our great country to none other than a banana republic and an abuse of power that we see happening in other countries around the world.
Can I ask you this, because you've had this experience? You ran for president. You were very successful within in the Democratic Party. You clearly were the one rising, and then they kind of put their sights on you. But explain to people what it's like, say, 5 weeks before Super Tuesday, because you don't just walk into federal. I'll say from my end, you don't just walk into federal court when you're the defendant and start prepping about it the day before. So what are you doing, say, a month out of Super Tuesday?
Well, Jay, you look at when the first voting will take place in Iowa. It will likely be in early to mid-January. So the elections will already be starting. When you look at, yes, you don't just show up in court one day without any preparation, but you look at from when voting begins with the caucuses in Iowa in January, and that span between those first votes being cast and Super Tuesday on March 5th is critical. It's what sets the front runners apart from those who say, hey, maybe this is not working out for me. So to be able to tie President Trump up in multiple court cases, multiple legal battles during that critical period in time their intent is to be able to cripple him and tie him up, tie his resources up, and choosing that timeline can be the difference between someone succeeding or failing. I hope voters are seeing through this and seeing the truth about what they're doing. I don't remember sleeping much during that period of time. I know I was on the move constantly, as one should be.
The fundamental thing about liberty is we live in a constitutional republic, so we have more liberty than any other government in the world. But we got to fight for it. You fight for it in the military. You fight for it in when you were in Congress. You're fighting for it now in the court of public opinion. But we got to fight for it. And the reality is, when you see a situation developing like it is now with the former president, and what is the pile on that's happening here, and the going after the lawyers, which I find personally repulsive. The moment I cannot defend my client zealously, and to say, boy, if I bring that legal theory up, am I going to be subject to RICO? Is a sad day for the United States of America, and we're putting liberty at stake at a huge level when we do this, Tulsi.
And that is exactly what's at stake here. So I just urge, your viewers, your listeners, but really the broader electorate in the United States to recognize what this moment means, and that we the American people cannot afford to sit back and allow these corrupt people to be successful in what they're doing, in their abuse of our Constitution and their abuse of this democratic process that our founders put in place for us. We have to lift our voices and make sure that we exercise our right to vote, to ensure they are no longer in a position where they can abuse that power and undermine our democracy. That is what is at stake in this election. It is much bigger than any individual. The future of our democracy and the future of this country is what's on the line.
You're talking about the core of liberty here, Tulsi, is at stake. I mean, we really could see this is a risky moment in our history right now, in my view.
Yeah, Jay, I will second that and encourage all of your listeners and viewers to support the great work that the ACLJ is doing. Your organization and the decades that you have dedicated, you and your team, to fighting for liberty and fighting for freedom is rare in this day and age where people are divided into different camps. And there are very few voices who are objectively committed to upholding the Constitution and liberty for every single American, no matter politics or race or religion or anything else. I have been a longtime supporter of yours and the ACLJ, the great and important work that you're doing. And it's essential that we all stand up and continue to support it, because you are literally in the trenches and on the front lines fighting this battle for our future, for our country.
Tulsi, we appreciate you being part of our team. I've known you and your family for, my goodness, I think since you were about 16 years old. So we go back a long time, and I represented your dad. So, I mean, I appreciate everything you're doing and appreciate you being part of the team here at the Ace. It's amazing how things work out in time. That's when you know God's in control of the universe, because nobody else could play in this. We appreciate it. Thanks for the insight.